Hi everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm Woodsman 907. With me again is Star Driver 907, my producer. Today our topic is going to be online forums, especially gaming forums. And as you can see here, I've got the Halo Waypoint forums up. We're looking for a topic and we decided we'd just come in here and see what we could find. You want to, anything else, anything to add before we jump in and try and find something?
Well, we don't really want to pick on the Halo forum. We were talking this morning about forums in general and forum behavior in the gaming community, and the Halo forum is the one we're the most familiar with. Although we have individually been on other forums, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarity in the way things work.
Right. So we just click on this Master Chief Collection forum just to get started. Okay, so right off the bat, you can see this one right here. So long Halo, long time effect. Just put it down. Mess with that. So this one right here, we saw this one this morning. So long Halo, long time fan says goodbye. We saw that and we're thinking, why would somebody even make a post with that title?
It's if you go to a gaming forum at all, pick a game, whatever game, you go on the forums, you're going to find posts like these where someone feels compelled to come and let the entire world know that they are no longer going to play this game anymore. And
as if that had anything to do with the influence of the sales. I don't think anybody's gonna miss this guy when he's gone. I mean, but it happens every time. Whenever there's a new game that comes out, you can always go onto the forums and see people who are just outraged by any of the changes. I mean, I haven't even read this one, but I already know what it says. It says this game is bullshit. The matchmaking doesn't work. It's not what they said it was gonna be. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. And of course, he's gonna tell us how he's a huge Halo fan, how he loves Halo so much, and then, but then he's gonna turn around and tell us that he's basically done with the game. And to me, it's like, if you were really just done with it, would you even feel the need to go onto the forums and announce that? I mean, if you were really at that point where you were just fed up, wouldn't you just stop playing it and just go to a different game? If this guy takes the time to come online and go to the forums for this game, just to say that he's not going to be playing anymore.
And again, to what purpose? I mean, what is it that you want us to say or do or think?
Yeah.
Because you decided that you no longer want to play this game. Why tell me? I don't even know you.
Yeah, exactly. And here's another one along those lines. Will you buy Halo 5 Guardians? I don't even think that should be in this forum.
It probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, there's another forum for Halo 5.
Something else that happens all the time. most of these gaming sites have multiple forums, uh, each one dealing with a specific section of the game. Yet folks just pick one and want to start something anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, and another thing that we noticed that seems to be sort of a pattern here is that the more negative the forum post is, the more responses it gets.
Yeah, the title.
Yeah, like this one right here. Why are you not playing Master Chief Collection right now? 103 responses. And then this one down here. Please bring Halo. Even ask nicely. Please bring Halo MCC to PC. One response. And I don't know, the odds that it's even a positive response are pretty slim. And then, yeah, here's another one over. Have you ever betrayed someone in Halo? What a dumb question. Well, I mean, there's no dumb questions, just dumb people asking questions.
Yeah, it's not. The thing about betrayals is it happens.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've all played games before. There's explosions going off, you know, grenades flying.
People get excited.
People get splattered.
Probably the easiest thing is you've lined up on an enemy, and right about the time you squeeze that trigger, your teammate steps in front of your weapon.
Yeah.
It happens. Yeah, a lot of people do it on purpose.
Yeah, some people do it on purpose, but you know.
And there are a lot of reasons for that. None of them are any good, but
yeah,
you know, it's any game where betrayal is a mechanic. It's gonna happen. It really doesn't do a lot of good to ask why, because it's the internet. The internet apparently seems to have that ability to bring out the worst in people.
Well, you know, there's something about being able to go into a public place anonymously and say whatever you want. I think that in general brings the worst out in people.
I should say it's the internet because way back before the internet, when there were these, they were called bulletin board systems. You know, when everything was dial up and everything, and just about every bulletin board had a chat section in it, and you know, you weren't so anonymous there because usually you go to a bulletin board system, you had to sign up, and the person running the thing knew who you were, and yet. That's where a lot of the terms we use today came from, like flaming. You know, that's where all that started, where people just go nuts because they're not face to face.
Yeah. Anyway, while you were talking there, I switched over to the Halo 5 forum. And I love here, like, immediately this one right here, hashtag hunt the truth. I don't know what that's about. Probably people trying to predict what Halo 5 campaign is going to be about. That one, understandably, has got a lot of responses. And then you look down here, just a few posts later, the one with the second most responses, the 307. Halo 5's population will tank. Here's why. That's not even a prediction. I mean, for crying out loud, that happens with every new game. Every time a new game comes out, especially a highly anticipated game like a Halo title, they're at the top of the charts for a while, and then people get bored, and then a lot of people just leave, you know? I mean, you know, it's the same thing every time. It happened in Halo 2, happened in Halo 3, happened in Reach, happened in Halo 4. I mean, it's got nothing to do with the content of the actual game. You know, a lot of people get a game that's new just because it's new. You know, not necessarily because they're actually fans of that franchise or that they're longtime fans of that game. You know, it's just a new thing. And then they move on to the next. You know, another game comes out. Now they're playing that one because that's the new one. You know, I mean, and this guy again. You don't even have to read these. You know what this guy's gonna say. You know, basically, Halo 5 is not gonna be like the games that I like, which means it's not gonna be any good. So the population will tank. Now I love how he's saying the population will tank, even though this game isn't even out yet. It has no population right now.
Yes. What is that based? What is that based on, other than the performance of the previous two major Halo releases, meaning Reach and Halo 4?
Yeah.
Um, although, um, well, I mean, we in a past broadcast we talked about Reach, which I believe the population dropped because of a major misunderstanding from the community. With Halo 4, um, I think generally it was just not what people wanted.
Well, yeah, they made a lot of mistakes in the Halo 4 matchmaking, some of which I personally am convinced were deliberate. Turn the volume down.
Oh, is that what happened?
It's on the top there. You know, like the reason I say some of the mistakes were deliberate is because they still have Infinity Slayer on the 360 edition of Halo 4, but in the Master Chief Collection, there's Halo 4 matchmaking, but there's no Infinity Slayer. You know, and there's other things that came up in the course of the matchmaking, but uh, I don't know. We'll try not to talk about that too much because we could do a whole different show about Halo 4. Um, but with regards to the forums, you know, just to take a step back and look at Reach, when 343 got a hold of Reach, the first thing they did was that big title update. You know, that was fueled primarily, I believe, by the forums. The people went onto, at the time it was Bungie.net, went onto the forums and complained about all the stuff that was new in Reach. At the time, the biggest complaint, the biggest, loudest complaint was the reticle bloom, or I should say the visible reticle bloom, because Halo's always had reticle bloom. It's just always been invisible up until Reach came out, and people saw that and they were just convinced that somehow the reticle bloom made it easier for new players somehow.
Well, um, there was a misunderstanding about how accurate your shots were because of the bloom. That somehow you no longer had to aim as precisely.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of nonsense. I mean, the bloom was made visible so that people could be aware of when their shots are losing accuracy.
Yeah,
That was all it was for.
Says, as it got bigger, it says, okay, if you keep shooting, you're probably going to miss.
Yeah. And I remember one time there was in the forum somebody posted a video of uh, kind of a Halo Mythbusters thing where they had two guys, one standing face to face, and they both had DMRs. One guy was using the cadence shots, and the other guy was just spamming. And Obviously, the guy who was just spamming missed a lot more, and the other guy didn't. But the guy that posted that, he was against the rectical bloom, and he was saying how, well, it's hard to remember because it didn't make any sense at the time, and it still
Well,
doesn't. But it's a
the thing was this. Um, they were saying that in order to be accurate, you had to pace your shots, okay,
Yeah.
which meant you had to slow down,
Yeah.
which gave the other guy more of a chance to kill you.
Right, that was it. Because the conventional wisdom at the time, moving back to Halo 3 and Halo 2 with the battle rifle, was just aim at their head and spam as fast as you can. And generally speaking, that's
Well,
how it
that's
goes.
probably going to work, if
Yeah,
the other guy's spamming too.
yeah, and yeah, that's true. And the other thing is, they always talk about these factors in terms of 1v1 encounters. You know, I mean, once you get a teammate into the mix, all the rest of that stuff just becomes bullshit. Anyway, to bring it back to the topic about the forums, is when 343 did the title update, was one of the things that they did they called it Zero Bloom, and what they did is they completely removed the bloom from all weapons, and which is not the same thing as making the guns work the way they did in Halo 3, which is what people really wanted or thought they wanted. They kept, but they got this into this.
Well,
Rut.
they wanted the weapons to uh, work the way that they did in Halo 3, and to them that meant that there was no bloom.
Right. Even though there was bloom, like we always said, you always did. There always was bloom in the game. It was just invisible. And then then what they did in Reach is with the title update, they got rid of the bloom, turned it down to 0, which completely changed the way every gun worked. I mean, it was just, that factor more than anything else in the title update is what changed it so much. And when they released the title update, Halo Reach was in the top 10 most played matchmaking games at the time. When the title update comes out, it drops right down, right out of that bracket.
That pretty much was it.
And you can go into Reach matchmaking now and see what they did to correct that. At first, when the title update first came out, it was across all the playlists, and every playlist had the same shit. And then they split it up. They brought back they called it the vanilla at first, and then later they called it classic, I think.
Yeah.
And they called the new stuff evolved. But I mean, you can just tell by the way that they did it that they know they made a mistake by doing that, and the reason they did it was because of how much hate there was, for the game Reach in the forums.
And back then, that was about the time when Waypoint came out with 343, and BNet was still in operation. And I was spending a lot of time in the Reach forum in Waypoint, or I'm sorry, on BungieNet, and it was just getting ridiculous in there. And then I found out that there's this Waypoint thing now, and you could go in there, and that forum there, they had a Reach forum there. It was the first one,
Mm-hmm.
and it was it was actually pretty nice in there for a while, because people were just coming in, and the conversations were less volatile, more more calm and collected, and the discussions were pretty genial,
Mm.
and that made me stop going to Bungie and start going with Waypoint, and it was pretty nice for a while.
And then, well, you can see for yourself what ended up happening.
But
Is
I
they,
did say in there that I thought I thought that 343 should have just left Reach alone. Um, but
which they did eventually. Well, they didn't so much leave it alone as much as just give up on it.
well, yeah, well,
Well,
that's the but I mean, they in their in other places on Waypoint, they were talking about how um, they were pretty much agreeing with the folks in the forum that Bungie had screwed Halo up with Reach, and they were going to fix it.
yeah,
And they went in there and um, everything that all these people were complaining about, they went in and they nerfed and
yeah,
they nerfed the armor abilities, specifically
armor
armor
lock,
lock.
armor lock. They well, the armor lock nerf I think was actually is one of the few ones I actually agree with.
Well,
Was what they did was, you know,
I'm talking about what they did at first, because they this is before the title update. This was immediately upon taking over Reach. They went in and they nerfed it to um, unusability.
what are you talking about?
Armor lock.
What I know armor lock, but what nerf?
They made it so that what did they do?
They didn't nerf anything until the title update came out.
They
They didn't mess with the gameplay at all until the title update came out.
okay, folks. I might be wrong, but it's my recollection that they went in and they started messing with things
They started messing with the playlists, but
yeah,
they didn't
that's
mess
true.
with the actual gameplay until the
But
title
I went in
update.
the forums and I said, um, you guys should just this was Bungie's last game, and they made it pretty much the way they wanted it to be. They understood what they were doing when they made it. They knew they weren't making Halo 4, they were making Reach. They were using Spartan 3s on a planet that was much larger than Earth, had different gravity. I mean, it was just a lot of things were different in that game, and they weren't trying to recreate Halo 3 there. And uh, the people complained to Bungie, and Bungie did what they always did, which was they just ignored that. And and I think they should have just left it as as a monument. And but they didn't. They came out and very loudly proclaimed that they could fix this game. And when they did roll out that title update, um, we all know what happened. And then they got real quiet, and from then on, everything that says they said was, well, we're not going to mess with Reach anymore because we're working on Halo 4.
Well, they messed with it a little bit more when they came out with the Combat Evolved anniversary. I
Yeah.
mean, that's sort of what they did. I mean, they did the title update for Reach, and and then it wasn't working. So then they did another title update where they had the dual sort of playlists, and then after that they didn't mess with it anymore, and they just said, "Oh yeah, we're working on this next thing," which turned out to be Combat Evolved Anniversary. And then of course that game never had its own matchmaking. They just tweaked Reach some more to make it kind of work like Combat Evolved a little bit. Like all the weapon settings were all basically the same, but the maps were different, and the maps were also in reach matchmaking, which means they had to be balanced for things like sprint and jetpack, which obviously weren't a factor in Combat Evolved, and it just didn't really work right. I remember that didn't a lot of people didn't really like it, myself included, because for one thing, when that game came out, I thought they were gonna give it its own matchmaking because they said it was gonna have matchmaking, but they never did, and that's why there's no, the Master Chief Collection. We've got Combat Evolved matchmaking, but no Combat Evolved Anniversary matchmaking because there never was any. I mean, like we've got Halo 2 Classic, we've got Halo 2 Anniversary, but there's a whole game that they made that's not in there because they never really finished it.
But see, here's the thing. All of those changes to Reach, well, to backtrack a bit, but go back to Halo 2. When that came out, there were some issues with Halo 2,
Yeah, lots of issues.
and there were two kinds of responses to that in the forums. Essentially, they were constructive and non-constructive. Okay.
Yeah.
The constructive ones were the ones where the people went in and said, certain things are happening when I'm playing this game that we don't think should be happening. And they would spell it out and give examples, so forth and so on. And the staff at Bungie went in and looked at that, and they were like, yeah, you got a point there. And there were the constructive ones where people just went in and said, you guys are stupid, you don't know what you're doing, you've broken this game, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
So listening to the constructive stuff, they did their one major update to Halo 2, and of course now people say that it's probably one of the greatest multiplayer experiences in Halo ever. Some people believe that now.
Yeah.
But the point is, as developers, they were very selective in who they listened to, and they let all that other stuff just roll off their backs, because they understood it's the internet. People are going to say things because they can. And they didn't let any of that affect the way that they made their games. On the other hand, when 343 took over Reach, there was this massive wave of people telling how Reach was wrong and how it needed to be fixed, how it needed to be more like Halo 3, and they listened to that.
Yeah.
And because those people got listened to, they smelled blood. They said, hey, we can affect the way that the developers make this game. And that's why it kept just getting worse. Because everybody figured if they went in there and they were loud enough and they were in there often enough, that they could force 343 to change the game to the way that they liked it.
Yeah.
And it hasn't stopped.
Yeah. There's still a lot of that going on in the forums, and you can see the influences of it in Halo 4 matchmaking, and and also I think between Halo 4 and Master Chief Collection, somewhere along the line. Well, I mean, between those two games, there were some power shifts at 343 headquarters.
Yeah.
They got a new project lead, director of art stepped down, and so on. Other few other things like that. The community coordinator also stepped down. They got a new one. Anyway, so Halo Master Chief Collection now, they're not they're not being quite so responsive with that. Of course, the other thing of it is, the way the Master Chief Collection is designed. It's just a collection of the previous games, so there's not a whole lot of suggestions that could be made. At least not until Halo 5 comes out. Then there'll be a whole other wave of things going on.
Well, hopefully there'll be enough newer players that, well, one can only hope that they're more enlightened.
Well,
You know that Halo 5 is going to be much different from Halo 3.
Yeah, well, we know that. We know that from the beta test.
And so folks like us who have played the game from the beginning should not be expecting that complete experience anymore. I mean, we should understand that the Spartans are equipped differently. They have different abilities. They're going to go about things differently. The weapons are going to be somewhat different. Apparently, a lot of old favorites are returning, but even though they're returning, they're going to behave a bit differently. And it has to do not only with the fact that the game is progressing, but the platform and the technology is light years beyond what it was when the original Xbox came out. And 343 is not going to miss a chance of taking advantage of that. And I suspect overall it'll be a good game. But some people, I guess, because they want to be thought of as, I don't know, purists or hardcore or something like that, are going to insist that anything that's new is quote unquote not Halo.
Yeah, well, they're just nerds. I mean, that's how all nerds are. I mean, and it's really just uh, a reaction to change more than anything. I mean, anything new, is just, I don't know, scary. I want to say, but it's like one of the things for Halo 5. From the Halo 5 beta test, I already know that there's a lot of people that were complaining about the auto stabilize feature. That's where when you're scoped in with your smart scope and you jump anytime you leave the ground, you auto stabilize in the air a little bit. Your armor kind of makes you float a little bit, so it's a little bit easier to shoot people while you're in the air. A lot of people hate that for some reason. I can't figure out why. Especially because it's not a feature that you have to have. You can just go into the settings and turn that off if you don't like it. I mean, I understand, especially with people that use the bumper jumper control settings, that could get really annoying, if you've been spending the last 10 years jumping and shooting at the same time. But for guys like me that use Boxer, or really any other one, it's great. I mean, I used it. Never really got any. I don't remember getting any kills just because of that. I don't remember ever dying just because of that either.
I think it's probably one of those skill things. They say that this stabilized thing makes it easier for newer players to get off a perfect shot, without really having to use there is some sort of extraordinary ability to aim. Because in Halo, whatever else you want to talk about, usually a lot of the issues revolve around the ability to aim. I mean, Blue was all about, if you're going to aim at something, it should be you doing aiming and not the game
Okay.
aiming for you. And that sounds like one of those things. Auto stabilize. Oh, he can shoot me at the push of a button.
Okay, well, just let's stay on topic here. We're talking about forums, not Halo 5. So you want to talk a little bit about the forums that you go in a lot is the Space Engineers forum. That's a little bit different because Space Engineers is an early access game as
Right.
opposed to Halo, which are games that are already completed when they come out.
Yes. Well, again, Halo is a mature franchise, and and so it has a following, and the expectations are all there. I mean, there's the games, there's books, there's comics, whatever, and folks can they've got something that they could draw on when it comes to talk about that game. Space Engineers is an early access game, which means that it's nowhere near complete. They're still making it, but you can go out, you can buy it right now. It's at a reduced price.
This is just some Spartan Ops gameplay that I was doing earlier just to have in the background. Not really relevant.
I just wonder if the sound is.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Crimson, we're dropping you off behind enemy lines to lend
Okay.
Marines a hand. You heard Commander Palmer at the briefing. We're here to knock some heads together.
Crimson, Commander Palmer.
So again, the game is early access. It's still in alpha. Alpha phase is where that's the phase where they're still working on the engine. They're still working on the mechanics. Everything is a work in progress. And when you go to buy the game, there's a disclaimer that says, "Hey, this game is under construction. It's not finished. It may never be finished. We don't know. We're still working on it. We might come to the conclusion that what we're trying to do is impossible." So just be aware of that when you buy the game. Okay, now it's been in alpha for over a year now. And if you bought the game when it first came out, it's way different now from what it was back then. The developers, King Software House, have done something that not many early access games have done, in that they have committed to coming out with an update for the game every week on schedule. Every Thursday, they update the game, and they put something new in.
Yeah, these updates aren't just, a lot of it's fixing bugs, but it's pretty much adding a new feature to the game every time.
Yeah, and it's so the game changes every week. They put something else in there that you have to take into consideration when you're playing the game. Now, it's a sandbox game. There's no campaign. There's nothing scripted. Everything you do in there is what you decide to do. And they also support modding. So other people go out and they make things for the game, and you can go to Steam and download those things and put them in your game. And right now, you can kind of just play this game anywhere you want. If you want to recreate the Star Trek universe, you can do that. The Star Wars universe, you can do that. I mean, it's just wide open.
Halo universe.
The Halo universe, yes. People are building ships. A lot of people have recreated the Pillar of Autumn. I think even the Spirit of Fire has been recreated. I mean, it's you can do what you want. There are no non-player characters in there though. So, but anyway, having said all that, what happens in the forums to me is a little odd because people go in and you know how we've talked about how people complain about Halo, which is a finished game, so it pretty much is what it is, even though they still go in and fix things. But that was AIM. You go buy that game, you pay full price, and it is what it is. Space Engineers, I bought that game for $6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right now it's around $20, and
it's on sale when you got it.
Yeah, it was on sale when it was $15, and it went on sale for $6, and that's when I picked it up. So for $6, it's an excellent game.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't beat it, you know. I would gladly pay $60 for that game in its current state, but they're nowhere near done with it yet. They're still adding stuff, okay? But there are people who are going into their forums and they are complaining about how the game works, as if they spent their hard-earned money on a finished game. And so many times people have to be reminded, hey, yes, this doesn't work, or that happened, or this doesn't happen, so forth. They're still working on the game. Mm-hmm. And you should have no expectation that it's going to work properly. If the only expectation you should have at all is if you load the game up and it runs. After that, all bets are off.
Yeah. And still people,
And just like with the guy in the Halo forums, there are people going in. You know what? I am done with this game. Mm-hmm. It's like, why are you telling us this? If you're really that upset because the game doesn't work the way you believe it does, then just stop playing it. It makes even less sense for a game that's an alpha, because you knew it was broken when you bought it. So how can you complain about it not working right when they told you when you bought it it's not going to work right? But it's just as persistent in the Space Engineers forums as it is in Halo's forum. And I don't understand why people do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's weird how people think that because they play games, that somehow gives them the knowledge of what it takes to also make games. Like something about having played a game for hundreds and hundreds of hours. Somehow they feel that they've gone that they have even the slightest idea of how the game actually works. I mean,
well, even more fundamentally, one of the things I hear a lot in both these forums is that once people have paid for the game, they figure that $10 or that $15 or that $60 entitles them to the developers complete and undivided attention. You know, it's like when they bought the game, they bought the company,
Yeah.
and now they're the CEO, and what they say goes.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine if people did that for like a book? Like if people bought a book, and then, well, I guess people do that for books too, and comics and movies and pretty much anything. But I mean, I'm with you. I don't understand that attitude. That how just because you bought a copy of the game, somehow I mean, like they didn't make you buy it. I mean, it's not mandated by the government that you have to buy every new Halo game that comes out. You know, you went out and chose to buy it. You know, and by the way, you don't have to play it either. You can turn around and sell it if you don't like it anymore.
Well, you can't do that with a Steam game.
No, true.
Like
you can't.
Space Engineers.
No, yeah,
once
that's
you bought
true.
it, it's yours.
That's true. But you don't have to play it if you don't like it.
No.
No.
And now I understand that $60 is, I don't care who you are, $60 is a lot of money
For a game. Yeah.
for a game. I mean,
I think that is overpriced, but yeah, for any game.
you know, I used to, it used to be when I went to the movies, it was, you know, $5. Well, $5 got you into the movie and big tub of popcorn and the whole 9 yards. Now, you know, it's pretty much $60.
Yeah.
If you're going to go to a movie and you're going to have some confections on top of that, it could be pretty spendy, and you're not getting your money back.
No.
You know, when you go in there, you don't like the movie, the best you can do is just get up and leave.
Yeah. If you leave before the movie's over, I think you can get your money back. If you sit through the whole movie, you're not getting your money back for that.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, the theaters aren't the ones that make the movies, but they're the ones that get the complaints about it when movies new comes out. You know, either that or people go online.
But I mean, you know, what I'm saying is, you know, I got a good job. I make a decent wage. I live pretty comfortably. $60 to me is not a lot of money, especially if there's a game that I want to buy and I think that I'll like. And but I understand for other people's that it's kind of a commitment. That I get $60. There's a lot of other things I could do with this, but I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to buy this game. And
you know, having said that, you know, that being said, for games, there's ways to know if you're gonna like it or not before you buy it. Not the least of which is Twitch.tv.
yes,
I mean, you know, somebody who was on the fence about playing Spartan Ops could get a lot of clues about whether or not they'd like it right now just by watching this stream. That goes for any game. You know, literally any game that's especially new ones that you might want to buy. You can go on Twitch. I mean, you can go on your phone and find 100 reviews about it in 5 minutes. You know, I mean, you really oughtn't be surprised. You know, the people that get screwed are the ones who buy it on the day that it launches. You know,
Yeah.
the guys that pre-order it and they go to the midnight launch and they get the game without having any idea what to expect. You know, even though they've got expectations, they don't know. You know, they don't know what the game's actually going to be like until they start playing it.
and the last thing you should do is go on the forums and ask the folks in the forum whether or not you should buy the game.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty common post, and I
Yeah.
never understood that. Like people go, "Should I buy this game?"
You know what the answer's going to be.
Yeah, the answer's going to be no. because you're asking people who came to the forums to complain about that game, and while they're here, if they should happen to see somebody asking if they should buy, especially if you're that guy that just posted about how he's never gonna play the game again, the last thing he wants is you to go out and buy a new copy and cancel his not playing out
Yeah.
anymore. So of course, yeah, those are the people. Those posts tend to get a few responses. Also partially because gamers like to think that their opinions matter, which they don't. I mean, no, they don't. I mean, unless you've got money, then they matter. But otherwise, no. Like whether or not. And when I say your opinions don't matter, it's because it's because fun. The idea of fun is subjective. Everyone's got a different definition of what fun is, and yet that's the primary motivation for people to buy a game, is that they think it'll be fun. So your opinion of fun has got nothing to do with anyone else's. So you can say the game is fun or it's not fun, but that's not really going to affect whether or not other people are going to be able to enjoy the game.
Now, with Steam, you can go in and write a review or recommendation for a game. And what's nice about that is that if you're looking at a game and you go into that game's hub on Steam, and you see the recommendations, if they are generally positive, then that's a pretty good indication that you already know what type of game it is when you go in and look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you like that type of game and it has a lot of positive reviews, then the next thing you ought to do is go on Twitch.
Yeah.
And watch people playing the game.
Yeah, Twitch is good because it's live and you can go into the chat and ask the people questions about the game if you're so inclined. The next best would be YouTube. There's plenty, people will do walkthroughs or whatever. Me personally, I don't do that stuff because I like to be surprised by games, but I only buy games that I already know I'm gonna enjoy. Like Halo, any Halo game that comes out, I'm gonna enjoy it no matter what.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah, like Halo, that one's just a given. But like Skyrim, when that game was coming out, I knew I was gonna like that game because I liked Oblivion. And I read Game Informer articles and etc. about it, and I knew what it was going to be like, and I was like, of course, when I found out there was going to be dragons, that was the end of it. 'Cause that was, man, I remember playing Morrowind and trying to find dragons. Like I didn't give a shit about that game, but I would ask people about dragons, and they'd say, they'd tell you about them, but like, yeah, there used to be dragons, but they're not really around anymore, and blah blah blah. And then I sort of lost interest in that game, and I just kind of. Plus, there's a lot of reading, and but anyway, the point is, going into the forums and complaining about a game, it's kind of silly because it's your money, you're responsible for it, and there's really no excuse for being surprised by the quality of the game beforehand, because all it takes is just the slightest bit of patience, and you can you can go online, find out everything you need to know about the game without ever actually playing it, and then you can make an informed decision as opposed to an impulsive one. It's like I said, the people that get screwed by this stuff are the people that just gotta have it now, that just gotta go out and get it when it's new, as if that. I don't know why. I don't know why that's really a thing. Maybe it's because it has something to do. I mean, I know in the case of Halo, maybe some other games, it has something to do with being the first one to reach a certain level, You know, being one of the first guys to rank up all the way or unlock everything, something like that.
Yeah, I want to be good at the game before a whole lot of people start playing it so that I can dominate.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's
guess
understandable.
yeah, that's understandable. You know, maybe you want to go in and learn all the new maps before everyone else learns them. But gosh, I mean, that's only going to give you an advantage for like a month at best. And then what? You'll never have that again. You'll never be at the top again. So of course you're going to get upset with the game. You know, of course you're going to be done with it after a month. You know, if the only reason you liked it was being better than everyone who's never played it before, you know, I mean, come on. I mean, if you're not going to like the game, you know, for the next 2 or 3 years that you're going to be playing it, then just don't get it. Just play the games that you already like. That's the way I look at it.
Now, on the other hand, constructive criticism, I love that. I love that. That's. I go into the space engineers forums, you know, because like I said, every week there's a new update, and the update comes out on a Thursday, and I generally don't get a chance to play the game until Saturday. So first I go into, they have what's called the change log, where they introduce what's come out this week, and so you go in there to find out what they did, and then for the next 2 days I'm in there trying to find out, you know, did this thing break the game? Is it really cool? What do they do? How does it work? How do you make it work? What does it do for you? All that sort of thing. And a third of the posts in the changelog actually have to do with what effect the update is having on the game. A lot of the rest of it is people complaining about what didn't happen.
Yeah.
There are some lingering issues with the game. They've been issues for a while.
Like that thing with the
The
rotors.
pistons and the rotors, if you're not familiar with space engineers, really, there's no point in going into it. There are parts in the game that
They cause issues.
yeah,
Use a lot
they
of them.
don't work properly, and but only on dedicated servers in a multiplayer setting. If you're playing single player, or you're playing multiplayer, but you're playing it on your personal computer as opposed to a server, the issues aren't really there. But if you're on a dedicated server, they cause so much of a problem that people just don't use them. You can play the game without using them, and that's what a lot of people like to do. But that's an issue because there are things that are kind of nice to have. It makes the game better, but the developers have just determined that the way that they made these things to begin with is just not working. So they're pretty much going to have to redesign them, and it's not something that they've been able to accomplish overnight. It's one of those things that is good that they've got to figure it out.
And it's like like Sir Driver was saying, they put out a new update every week. You know, and this is one of those things where they can't get it figured out right now, so they could stop everything and spend maybe 2 or 3 weeks working on just this. But then they wouldn't be able to do those other updates, that they can do.
Yeah, even more to the point, if they did, that's what a lot of people are saying. They're saying, just don't do anything till you fix that. And the problem with that is, if they did that, if they stopped everything and fixed pistons and rotors so they could work with the game the way it currently is, it's it's going to cause problems later on because the game is not finished.
Yeah, exactly.
They make it so that it works with the engine the way it currently is, and to get them to work perfectly, then they find out that the other stuff that they want to do with the game means that they have to change the engine.
Hmm.
Next thing you know, they're not working again, and that's even worse.
Yeah, to have them fixed and then break them again
Yeah.
later.
So yeah, but go back to the constructive criticism. As with say Halo 2, folks, when you're the developer, when you're making a game, you can be so close to it that there are things that you're just not going to experience. Okay, and so you think the game is fine because when you play it, everything works. As a developer, I mean, when I say
Right.
and that's what's nice about these early access games is that they come out with an update, a new thing for the game, and they play test it amongst themselves, and it seems to work. So then they stick it in the game, and they tell us about it. So here's this new thing. Here's what it's supposed to do. Now we get a chance. And, as players, the first things that we're going to do is test the limits.
Right. Look
Okay.
for exploits, look for glitches, anything like that. Yeah.
And then what we should do, and what a lot of people do is they come back and say, okay, I tried using this thing, and probably the first thing is, well, I put this thing in the game, and then my computer crashed. Well, they want to know about that, Or I put this thing in the game, and it looks weird, when I place it, it doesn't stay where I put it, or it does something else, or I put it in there, and a lot of the other things that I already had in the game quit working. These kinds of things they want to hear about, and that's what happened with Halo 2. Amongst all the crying and yelling and complaining, there were people that said, well, and I wasn't around then. I'm not sure exactly what the issues were, but the game was clearly not working as well as Halo CE did.
Well,
And
it was the matchmaking. It wasn't because Halo CE didn't have matchmaking,
Right.
but it was issues like a lot, I think, similar to what the Master Chief Collection experienced. That matchmaking issues, a lot of lag, a lot of weird bugs, weird things going on, stuff like that, and just to the point where it was, my understanding, these are just basically unplayable.
And I remember with Reach, there were some issues in some of the maps where you could, there were parts in some maps where you could, like, as a character, like, phase into a cliff or something, or you could find a place on the map where you could shoot and not be shot.
Yeah, like there'd be an invisible barrier between
Right,
you.
yeah.
Stuff
Yeah.
like that, I mean, stuff that just needs to be play tested before
Right.
people can find it.
Yeah, and they didn't catch it. Then the game comes out, and you go. I'm saying that to say that when I admonish people for complaining, it's the non-constructive stuff that really doesn't help anything. And people that take it upon themselves to lead the charge to kill the game because something happened that they didn't like. And I know that's what a lot of this is, when people get so adamant and make posts like, I'm leaving this game and never coming back. It is a call to arms They want everybody else that plays the game to stop playing as well, so that they can teach 343 a lesson.
Right.
Um, and that's
Yeah, they want to boycott Halo.
right.
As if that were even feasible. You can't boycott Halo, not unless you want to boycott Microsoft. Okay, so
Yeah.
all you people out there watching this on your Windows machines, like, stop doing that. Stop using Microsoft Office. If you have a Surface or any PC that uses Windows, because the thing about it is, no matter how much people hate this game, Microsoft will keep spending the necessary money to get another game produced. Okay, because Halo's a huge franchise for them. Whether or not the individual game has a decent matchmaking population really is not entering in the minds of the CEOs of Microsoft. They don't give a shit about whether there's 100,000 people or 10,000 people playing the game. They don't care. Like, they know if they put out a new game, people will buy it and the franchise will survive. Can always do another. They've got that TV show that's coming out. There's so much money invested in it. And even if they're losing money on every Xbox they sell, which they do.
Which they did.
I know at least with the 360. I don't know about the Xbox One, but on the 360, they were losing money for every Xbox sold, and they made the money back through games, especially Halo, and through selling Xbox Live. Again, that's Halo selling Xbox Live memberships.
I mean, given how hugely successful Halo 3 was,
Mm-hmm.
They didn't keep making Halo 3.
No.
They're going to make a game, they're going to put it out there, they're going to support it for a few years, and, after 2 more games have come out, that game is going to stop getting support. I don't care how popular it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but now they've got I think a pretty elegant solution to that here with the Master Chief Collection. It's getting all those old games on one thing, so they just keep supporting this, and keep coming out with new games at the same time. But that's just to say that's what really confuses me the most about people that go online and say they're going to stop buying the game, because that is not going to have. If you think that's going to have an effect on whether or not the next game gets made or has anything altered at all, you're delusional. Microsoft owns this game. They're going to spend the money to put out. Of all the, after Windows Vista and Windows 8, you think like everyone hated that shit too. But they keep coming out with fucking Windows. I'm sorry, but that's how Microsoft is, and that's why.
Did you hear that they're going to stop making Internet Explorer?
They are?
Yeah, I heard that this week. Internet Explorer is going away, but they're coming out with another browser, and I believe they're calling it, and get this, Spartan.
Really? Yeah, that's right. And they've got that Cortana thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
and Cortana's coming out for Android.
Yeah. And Cortana is not even alive in the campaign anymore. Well, she was never alive, but she dies. Supposedly at the end of Halo 4. There, spoiler alert if you didn't already know that. Of course, if you're watching Spartan Ops, you should probably have completed the Halo 4 campaign. So shame on you. But yeah.
I got into a very heated forum conversation about whether or not Cortana is quote-unquote dead. And I got into a conversation with this guy that insists that she has to be, because the word dead was used when Cortana came up in conversation in the game and on Waypoint.
Yeah.
Which to me doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
The word's first off, she was never alive. Right. And then we got into a big discussion about that.
Yeah. mean, yeah,
and second off, um, uh, when she quote unquote died, um, I, I don't know how you could characterize what happened as death, because all she did was disappear.
yeah. I mean,
And there are any number of ways that she could still exist, because it's a science fiction game.
mhm.
And and my premise in that whole series of conversations over there was that, the upshot is that if the writers decide they need her to be in the game or to continue to be in the story, they could just write her back in.
Yeah, and no one would question it.
Yeah.
I mean, people come back to life in science fiction probably more than any other genre. I mean, especially fantasy. You know, people like to think that fantasy, because there's magic, it's easier to have people come back to life. But in fact, the opposite is true. You know, at least in my opinion. But because with science fiction, the difference between science fiction and fantasy is magic. You know, when you've got magic, magic is actually defined by what you're not able to do. You know, because the premise with magic is that you can do anything. And so to have a story where there's magic in the game, you have to put limits on it. You can say, okay, you can do the spell, but only on the full moon, you know, on the third week in August, you know, and if you get the magic words exactly right. You can't just think it, you have to get the words right, and everything, etc. But with science fiction, science is all about what you can do. It's about what the possibility that you can do. You know, you can do this, you can do that, you can find a way, you know, to make it happen. And when I get in this conversation, which is something I got into on the forums a little bit, but I never really expanded on it. You know, the way I think of it is Lord of the Rings. If the Lord of the Rings was a science, I mean, okay, the premise Lord of the Rings, I'm sure most of you, pretty much everyone knows, you know, Frodo got this ring that he's responsible for. He's got to take it to Mount Doom and throw it into the volcano because that's the only way it can be destroyed. You cannot destroy that ring any other way than to throw it in the fires that it was forged, in which it was forged. Okay? Now, if the Lord of the Rings was a science fiction, then all that would have to happen would be Gandalf would just build a fusion reactor with that perfectly mimics the conditions inside the fires of Mount Doom, and then just look at Frodo and say, "Okay, chuck the ring in there. We're done.
We're done."
That's it." You know.
Pretty short story.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those epic battles.
Yeah. Just totally avoidable in science fiction. You know. Or at worst, they could have just teleported there. You know, if they didn't want to go to the trouble of building something, Gandalf could have just built the teleporter and said, "Okay, zip, there we are." You know. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, if you want to say people can't, you know, come back to life, I still hold out hopes that Sergeant Johnson will come back to life. You know,
Possible.
it's possible. You know.
I'll argue with anyone about that.
Yeah. You know, I mean, or they could at least come out with another, you know, character kind of like him, because everybody misses Sergeant Johnson.
Gotta admit.
You know, I mean,
He knew what the ladies liked.
he did. He had the best line. But, you know. But anyway, since we're talking about fiction and that sort of thing, you know, I actually never really went to the forums that much, but one time I did. It had to do with the fiction, the Halo universe. You know, I'm a big fan of all the incarnations of Halo, and I obviously have read all the books. Well, almost all of them, not the Broken Circle, because somebody's honking it. But the topic was about the mantle. For those of you that don't know, the mantle is a really important sort of keystone in the Halo universe that doesn't really come up much in the campaign so far, but it's but in a nutshell, it's a Forerunner concept that has to do with protecting all life, at least all life in the galaxy, as they define it.
Well, not just the galaxy.
No, for them, yeah, just the galaxy. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I got into a lot of really long, big discussions in the forum about the mantle, and the mantle it's first mentioned in the terminals in Halo 3. In the terminals in Halo 3, for those of you that don't know, it's actually a conversation going back and forth between the didact and the librarian. And if you read the terminals, what they're really discussing is it sort of tells the story of why they activated the Halo rings, and also why they decided to catalog the genes of, in particular, humanity, and have them survive the Halo effect and repopulate and eventually become the Reclaimers, as they're called in the Halo games, by the time Master Chief's around. And the terminals are really interesting, and then that same storyline was expanded a lot in the Forerunner trilogy of books, Cryptum, Primordium, and Silentium, which are really good reads for those of you who haven't read them yet. The interesting thing about that, since I'm talking about it, is that at the time that Halo 3 was made, the Foreigners actually were not a different species. The Foreigners were actually supposedly ancient humans at the time, but it was never really officially canonical, which, by the time Bungie left, and, so that gave 343 a little bit of room, and they went ahead and made them a different species, and,
Again, which is precisely what I'm talking about when I say the writers determine the way things happen.
yeah.
The story was going in one direction. They got new writers, or maybe the same writers, but they got a different direction. They told to go in a different direction, so they just...
Well, they needed a new enemy besides the Covenant or the Flood. You can see them here, that's the Prometheans. And we know that these Prometheans wouldn't exist without that distinction between humans and Foreigners. Because they needed that Didact character. They expended a lot on the character of the Didact, and he's the one responsible for creating these guys, who at one point were actually ancient humans. Well, they weren't ancient at the time, they were just humans. They're actually far more advanced than we are at this point in the story, which is 500 years from now. Well, actually, no, I take that back. These Prometheans that you see here, they're actually degraded humans. They're actually a lot more primitive than we are. But that's because after the human-foreigner war, the foreigners sort of degraded them or de-evolved them to a point where they're a lot more primitive and less threatening.
It was an effort to keep them from inheriting the mantle, keep us humans from inheriting the mantle.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's how they handled. That's how the Forerunners handled things.
Yeah.
They figured.
Well, they figured that they had the mantle, and so any act of defiance against the Foreigners by the transitive property is also an act of defiance against the mantle, which they use as justification to all but destroy any species that got in their way until they came across the flood, which was one that they couldn't quite get a handle on. That's what motivated them to create the halos and so on. But yeah, there's a little Halo history lesson for those of you who aren't already aware. But that's just to say that there's also as far as they talked a lot about positive and negative feedback about the game. There's also the factor of using forums as a place to discuss like the story elements in a game. Right through that cover. I thought that would at least slow them down, but it didn't. Anyway, the online forums is a good way, from the developer standpoint, it's a good way to gauge just how much people know about the Halo universe. Good way to test our reading comprehension skills. Because there's books out there, but you can read them, and two people can read the same book and come to different conclusions about what it means, and that's true about any book. It's true about the Bible, and it's certainly true about any of the canonical Halo fiction. See, that trick usually works, but I think I went around the wrong side. I went around on the side with the gun then. Anyway, forums are a good place to go and talk to other people that are familiar with the story, and it's also a great place to speculate on where the story might be going. Like in the Halo 5 forum, there's I remember when they released that first image. Well, they leaked it by accident. That first image of the Halo 5 Guardian had Spartan Locke looking down the reflection of Master Chief. I remember that when I first saw that. People were like, "Well, who's this new Spartan?" And at the time, my theory was that it was just Master Chief wearing new armor. Of course, that turned out to be wrong. Like a week later, someone at 343 announced that the other Spartan was a new character that we've never met before. And I have my own personal theories, of course, about where the plot of Halo 5 is going. But there's no point in bringing it up here in this week's topic.
Yeah, because my experience has been that all the speculation in the forums about Halo 4 turned out to be off base.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the speculation about Halo 3 was off base. I wasn't really active in the forums then, but
Neither was I. There were people that thought that Cortana was dead at the end of Halo 2.
Yeah.
People that didn't, watch the ending after the credits find out that. But, there were also people that said Master Chief was good. Of course, there were people that thought Master Chief was dead at the end of Halo 3.
Yeah.
Again, who didn't watch the legendary ending, find out that he was totally alive.
Some of the people that watched the legendary ending saw Requiem and said, "Oh, there's Reach."
They thought it was Onyx. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
same thing.
Too.
That's in a way that's even worse. But yeah, there's no way it was.
I don't know that anyone has ever nailed through speculation what the next game was going to be.
Well,
and I doubt that Halo 5 will be any different. Whatever it is you think's going to happen, that's probably not what's going to happen.
Yeah, which is why I think they even have a Halo 5 forum a year before the game's even going to come out. They're still working on the campaign. If anybody gets too close, they could change the shit out of it right at the last second. That's what I would do. Find out what people think is going to happen, and then just do something different. But as far as speculation
I've
goes,
always wondered if I could do that.
jump onto the.
Yeah.
No, you can't jump on it from there. At least not with these jetpacks. You can't
You
really.
got to be in one of those.
Yeah.
Other,
Yeah, then I think you can get on there. I got one more in here.
So I don't think we're gonna. The two of us sitting here are going to change forum behavior by the end of this broadcast.
No, we're just discussing it.
Yeah.
Hopefully anybody that sees this can, at least, if you're reading stuff in the forums, try to take it with a grain of salt. Don't try, the worst thing you can do is go into forums and read stuff and just believe what you read, just believe what people say about the game. Because, you go online, I guarantee you'll hear the worst opinions about the game. And I just think that as a trend does more harm than good. As far as actually, affecting the game. We talked about how the forums did a little bit more harm than good, with Reach. And we also talked about how when they're handled correctly, or handled maturely by people, they can actually be pretty helpful.
It also brings to mind Halo Wars.
Oh yeah.
When that game first came out, because it was so different from, first off, it was a real-time strategy and not a first-person shooter. And so a lot of people that picked up the game kind of struggled with it a little bit. And what I found refreshing at the time was that there appeared to be a number of people who managed to get a handle on the game and were more than willing to go into the forums and calmly and rationally explain how things work and give a lot of good advice, and were just generally really, really helpful.
Yeah.
However, as time passed, some of those same people, I don't know what happened to them, but they crossed over to the dark side.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of them were people that had played RTS games for PC, beforehand, and who had maybe played Age of Empires, and they knew how RTS games were supposed to work. And most of the people that were complaining were people who are fans of the Halo franchise, who were only familiar with the shooters, and they didn't quite understand, how an RTS is different, and people, those people were happy to come in then, but, as it went on, those same RTS players, eventually just became Halo players, and they sort of corrupted, because that's probably the most harmful thing that happens in forums is people's attitude. It affects other people, and Halo Wars is one example where even people that are rationally minded, if they're put in an environment where A, they're getting all the attention because they know stuff, and B, the people giving them attention are also turning around and trash talking the game, the Halo franchise, and the other people that are playing it, and this and that, picking the game apart every chance they get. if those people, if one day they're giving you attention and making you feel good about yourself, it's easy to just get swayed up in their opinions because you don't want to become the unpopular one. You don't want once you've got their attention, not even so much their loyalty, but just their attention. You want to hold on to that, and eventually you lose your own self and you lose your own opinions about the game. And like you said, when you see what happens, that
Well, needless to say, I was a little dismayed. Um, and I guess the lesson there is that um, you need to hold your perspective, and try not to get too wrapped up in what other people say, and try not to make things personal, and try not to take things personally. That's a lesson I had to learn myself in the forums, because in the beginning, um, I behaved a lot like that, and I'm not saying that I don't anymore, because sometimes, depending on what the subject is and how passionate I am about it, sometimes I go overboard, but I try to catch myself, and if I'm lucky, if I'm out of line, someone else will come in and tell me, and I will apologize, and I these days I try to be the one that tries to keep things in perspective, and keep the discussion on track, and try to keep um, all the posts germane to the subject, and um, try to discourage people from making personal attacks on other people, or just coming on and generally calling everybody else stupid, um, because they don't agree with you. Because if you really like a game, all your efforts should be on making the game better. If there's room for improvement in the game, and there's room for improvement in any game, there always is, okay, you should endeavor to try and foster conditions where those improvements get a chance to be made. If you're being negative, um, and if you're fostering negativity, then no one wins.
yeah,
And if you just don't like the game, what's not going to happen is that you're not going to be able to go into the forums and convince everyone else that they shouldn't like the game. All that's going to do is just create this maelstrom of negativity where no one wins. So that should never be your goal. It should never be your goal to lead the charge to kill a game, because the game, no matter what you think, is going to live or die on its own merits.
it didn't work for Halo2Sucks.com.
Yeah.
And it's not going to work for you. I'm sorry. I mean, it's really easy to talk about the negative aspects of anything, any topic. It's way easier to tear it down than to build it up. I mean, and you're not the brave one if you go onto the forums and talk about how much you hate the game. That there's no bravery, no valor involved in that whatsoever. It's much harder to go in the game and talk about the things that you like about it and talk about the positive aspects. Because those are the people that are going to get torn apart by others in the forums, you know. To go online anonymously and say that you hate something, you know, big deal. I mean, nobody cares. That happens every day. But to go online and say that you like something despite its flaws, and it's especially if you advocate change in any way. You know, especially if you tell people that, you know, that they're the ones that are at fault for not liking a game because of their inability to adapt. You know, if you suggest that maybe a little bit of patience is required, you know, for the things that you can't control, like the problems with the Master Chief collection, and with that damn article that came out, the 100 days later bullshit, as if there was a fucking time limit, you know. I'll tell you right now, what that article doesn't cover is the fact that prior to the game's launch, 343 announced that there was going to be regular system updates to the game. Alright? And when I heard that, that was my clue that the game wasn't going to work correctly on launch, and that I shouldn't expect it to work correctly on launch. And we didn't get it on launch either, though. We didn't get it until Black Friday.
Right.
And and obviously it wasn't working correctly by then either, but it didn't stop me from enjoying it. I mean, I didn't go into matchmaking until, I always like to finish the campaign before I go into matchmaking, and even though I'd already done all these campaigns separately, I wanted to do them all in one run through. And I was about halfway through Halo 2 when the Halo 5 beta test came out. So obviously I had to take a break to do that because it's a temporary thing. Anyway, then afterwards I went back to playing the campaign, and a few weeks later I was back into matchmaking, and I didn't see any real problems with it. The only problems with it were when you tried to party up, and the other thing that 100 Days Later article doesn't cover is the fact that all of the issues, all the little individual issues that added up to make the game, appear broken, those issues were due to the fact that this is a game that was designed for dedicated servers, and those dedicated servers just were not active, and still to this day are not activated yet. So, and that's
when the game launched, I didn't have the game when it launched, like you just said, but I was still very active in the forums, and I was wanting to hear about what was happening, how it was doing, and the nature of the complaints at the time suggested to me that there was a problem with the servers. Just the way people were talking about how matchmaking occurred, and what didn't happen, and all of these issues, they suggested to me that there was a problem with the servers. And then I find out later that, there aren't any servers.
Yeah, and that explained a lot right there. I mean, like, the main issue was that was with partying up. You'd party up, but you'd be joined in the same lobby, but it wouldn't appear on the user interface, so you wouldn't be able to tell that you were in the same party, the way it does with other games. The reason for that is because like I said, this game was designed for dedicated servers, which weren't up yet. So the game is running on peer-to-peer hosting, but this game doesn't understand peer-to-peer hosting. So when two or more players party up, the game's confused because it doesn't understand. It picks a host for you, but it doesn't understand that it's supposed to tell you who the host is, because as far as the game's concerned, Microsoft is supposed to be hosting. So the game actually works fine for a game that had dedicated servers, but this game didn't have that yet. And that's not 343's fault, frankly. You know, 343 got all the blame for it, but it's not their fault. Just think about it. Who pays for the servers? Not 343.
Microsoft said make a game that's going to run on servers, and then didn't give them the servers. So
Yeah, and they're like, okay, well, you know, I don't know. Maybe they said, yeah, we're waiting for after the Halo 5 beta comes out, we'll give you a dedicated server for that. You know, and it's this whole thing. It's the same thing that's been going back. I mean, they've always said ever since Halo 3 that they're gonna have dedicated servers in the next game. You know, they said that for Reach. They said it for Halo 4. They said it for Master Chief Collection. And they're saying it for Halo 5. You know, they said it for Spartan Ops too. You know, for Spartan Ops, there was gonna be Season 2 of dedicated servers. This, that, blah blah blah. You know, and Microsoft just keeps raising the bar for how much money this game needs to make before it becomes necessary to have the dedicated servers. And you know, but they don't. It's like they don't understand that the game needs the dedicated servers in order to make that money in the first place. You know, so at a certain point, hopefully for Halo 5, they'll just get it figured out. But yeah, you know, and another thing people don't realize is they compare the matchmaking in this game, the matchmaking in Halo 4, you know, for 360. But the problem with that is that Halo 4 actually uses the same matchmaking system that Bungie developed for Reach. So the Halo Master Chief Collection is 343 Industries' actual first matchmaking engine, if you will. You know, so you can't really compare it to Halo 4 because that was a matchmaking engine that was made for a different game that works just fine, and you know they actually messed it up a little bit by adding the join in progress. Nobody really liked that, and they also they tweaked it. They made it so that the matches were made faster, which made it appear to be a different matchmaking engine. They made the matches occur faster because you know if you were in matchmaking lobby for like a minute or something, you know, or like 30 seconds, it would stop searching for games with players of similar skill levels. It would stop searching for good connections. It would stop searching for people in the same continent. It would just throw everything out and just throw you into the nearest game that was going on. And usually that meant you'd be joining in progress on a team that was losing. And everybody hates that. I mean, who likes that shit? You know? But yeah, that's basically the only thing that's ever been wrong with the Master Chief Collection is its lack of dedicated servers. All the other issues that have been going on are actually really just symptoms of that one issue, you know. And with this last content update they did, all they really did was make this game work for peer-to-peer hosting, which, you know, or really just appear to work for peer-to-peer hosting. You know, all they did was they had to make some changes to the user interface. You know, really basic changes. I mean, you know, before, you know, it was bad. I'll admit it was really frustrating and unnecessarily complicated. But it wasn't. It didn't make the game unplayable, in my opinion. You know, because all it took was, you know, put on a mic, get in party chat, talk to the people that are in the party with you, like, okay, I joined you, you know, do you see me on your thing? No, I don't see you. And then, you know, usually, even if you don't see each other, you know, the problem is you know, you wouldn't be able to see the other person in the party, and so you would assume that meant you were separated, but you really were actually together. And then, you know, the problem is then they try to join, but they didn't get the option to join because they're already two. And, you know, but then I noticed that once you go into matchmaking, and when you actually find a match, you know, and you can, it'll match you with that person that's in your party, you know, and they'll show up in the roster as soon as you start finding other people, because that's when the game selects a host for that match, you know, because like I said, it's peer-to-peer hosting. Once they get a match starting to be made, that's when they select who's going to be the host for that game. And that's the point when you get to see the people that are in your party. You know, and I also noticed, you know, that in games where either myself or one of the other people in the party were host, after the game, we'd be able to see each other. because one of us was host. And then other times, one of us would be the party leader or the game session leader, it's called now, and then get a game, and then one of the other people would get host for that game. And when you exited the game session leader would change too, and so that whoever was hosting that game all of a sudden became the game session leader as well. And all these things to me were clues that obviously this game is running on peer-to-peer hosting, but you're definitely not going to read that in one of the updates on waypoint.com and one of their blogs or their bulletins or anything like that. Not only would they not say that out of common sense, but my guess is that they are contractually forbidden from saying anything that might suggest that the problems with these games is the fault of Microsoft in any way. I'm sure anybody that came out and told the fans that the reason the game is broken is because of Microsoft, that person would find themselves out of a job in a minute. So yeah, you're not gonna read that in the bulletin or the blog.
And Microsoft is certainly not going to come out and say, you know what?
Yeah, our bad. You see, 343 is Microsoft. It's owned by Microsoft. Microsoft is in charge of everyone that gets hired in there. It's just a division of Microsoft, okay? And all this shit, this has all been going on. This is not new to Halo. This is exactly the kind of shit that made Bungie leave, because Bungie would get a lot of shit, a lot of the same kind of shit for their games not working. And it would be because of Microsoft, like the lag issue in Halo 3 was a big problem. But there was nothing.
And how fast Halo 2 came out.
Yeah, exactly. That game came out. Every game that they did came out way too early, and that's why they left. The 343 doesn't have that option. They can't leave. They're like,
well, the people can leave.
Yeah, the people can leave. The 343 is not a sovereign entity. It's completely owned by Microsoft. It's like the Iron Bank. In Game of Thrones. What's his name? Tywin says, it's made of people, and just as a church is made out of bricks, one brick crumbles and another brick is put in to replace it, and the church maintains its form, and then such as it is with Microsoft and 343, and again, this goes back to why it's so pointless to try and boycott these Halo games, because it doesn't matter to Microsoft, and if it doesn't matter to Microsoft, it doesn't matter to 343. It's like I said, unless you're planning on boycotting all Microsoft products, which means all of Xbox Live, not just Halo, all Windows products, all Microsoft Office products, basically half the fucking internet. Come on. There's no point. That's not getting you anywhere. Best thing you can do, it's something that the community has to come together and get to the roots of the problems and actually, learn what sort of expectations are realistic, what sort are not realistic. Like this idea that you can that you personally leaving the game and being fed up with it and just being done, the delusion that is going to have in any way any kind of effect on the next game, that's not realistic. It's not a realistic.
I don't know that that's ever happened with any game. I'd be interested in hearing if someone can come up with an example where someone went on the forums and said, you know what, I'm done with this game. Who's with me?
Yeah, and that was the end of that game.
Yeah.
Come on. If there was one historical reference, then I might change my opinion. But there's not. Sorry, that's never worked before. There's no reason why it would ever work in the future. I mean, it's just silly. You know, you know, yeah.
I also, you know, yeah, when you do that, when you go in there and say, I'm quitting this game, I'm never coming back. Uh, uh, you know, first off, I can't argue with you about that. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to beg you to stay.
Yeah, you know.
And I don't know that whenever I see those kinds of posts, I've never heard anyone say, no, wait.
No, please, we need you.
Yeah.
We need you. This game will be nothing without you. Like, how are we supposed to enjoy this game if you're not playing it? Guy we've never met before? I mean, come on.
And so, you know, if you've really got that much of a beef with the game, what is the harm in explaining what it is that has you so frustrated, and then having the skin thick enough to accept the response to that? Because you know, if you've got some, I don't, take this game sucks. Reach sucks because of armor lock. Okay, and that's why I'm going to stop playing it. Then some people are going to come back and say that's a stupid reason because, you know, well, first off, you get a lot of people that agree with you because, you know, it's armor lock, you know. But then you have people like me come in and say, you know, the problem is not armor lock. The problem is your inability to adapt, which then will start an entirely new series of flaming because people that didn't like armor lock really hated that word adapt.
Yeah, that's true.
But regardless, to come on and say that you're not going to play a game anymore, that doesn't help anyone. You should come on and say, I'm going to stop playing this game because this thing or that thing or the other thing is not right, or I don't like it, or it should be different, or something like that, and then be prepared for the discussion that follows. And it should be a discussion. Okay, maybe it could get a little hot, maybe it could, you know, and all that, but I mean, it should never devolve to the point of name calling and you know, that sort of thing. A lot of times it could end up where, you know, you just agree to disagree and all that, but really the conversation should never start with, I'm going to stop playing the game anymore, because who cares?
Yeah, really.
You know? It's a forum. It's a discussion forum. You should come in with a post that's going to initiate a debate. Okay, we don't care about your personal opinions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you just want to express your personal opinion, try Twitter. You know, try Facebook.
Yeah, that's what those things are for. Me, I am a big fan of debate. I like to debate. That's why I spend so much time in forums, because I'll get into a debate with someone about the pros and cons of something, or my perception versus their perception, and most of the time they're amicable. I tend to try to let the other guy to be the one that turns to the irrational side, it's just something because of my job that I do, the one I get paid for, and some of the things that I participated in, particularly in my union, where I was an advocate for my members, which meant that, you know, when the boss came in and decided that somebody needed to I was one of the guys that says no, they should not be fired, and here's why. And I was pretty good at that. And so I'm not afraid of arguments, or I should say, I'm not afraid of debate. And I'm pretty comfortable with debate if I know that I have facts to use. If I'm out of my element, and that's made clear to me, I'll be the first one to admit it, and I'll just back up and listen to everybody else talk. But if I know something, or if I know something to be true, I'm not going to let you convince me that it's not. And but generally I have a good time in the forums. It's when people come in and are unreasonable and irrational and are clearly just trying to incite bad behavior. I just think it's unnecessary. It doesn't help anyone, and you should take that somewhere else. Just forums should be a good place to go. That's why the developers, that's why those people create those. We didn't create them so that people can go on there and just be silly and argue and call each other names and fight. That's not why they created those things. They want a discussion to take place about this game that they put their heart and souls into. They want to know what's good about it. They want to know what's bad about it. They want to know what they can do to make it better. And they don't care if you don't want to play the game anymore.
Right. If you don't want to play the game anymore, then you're not the ones that they're interested in. If you go into the forums and you've made up your mind that you're finished with the game, then that makes you the person whose opinion matters the least at that point.
You remember what they did in Halo Wars? If you went in the forums and said something like, "I'm done with this game," you were banned.
Yeah, exactly. That's what should happen.
Yeah, they said, okay, you're not going to play the game anymore? Fine. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. You were done.
Yeah.
And I agree. That's the way they ought to do it. You come in and say something like that, well, okay, you're not playing the game anymore, then your opinion no longer matters. Goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's perfectly reasonable. People come in and say, "I'm done with the game." Then why would the rest of your argument is invalid? If you lead with, I'm fed up with the game. I'm not going to play anymore. I'm never going to buy another game. Then why would the developers want to listen to you then? At that point,
First off, like a lot of people know, they already got your money.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, unless it's the kind of game where you keep paying, and there's games like that. But if it's not one of those, if you handed your $60 over to whoever and got a copy of the game, then as far as they're concerned,
yeah.
In the case of Microsoft, now it's just a matter of how much Xbox Live time you buy.
Yeah, and then they know you got an Xbox.
You're not just playing Halo.
Yeah, you're playing something else online too. And I mean, some people that they sell. Some people are selling their Xbox Ones. Just kind of silly, I think. Because with I mean, I understand it right now. There's not that many good original games for this generation of consoles, but a lot of the games that have come out are remakes. But having said that, eventually they're going to run out of games that have been remade. I mean, they're going to start. I mean, look at any time a new console comes out. The first few games that come out with it are they're okay. They're not that great. And then a couple of years go by, some better games come out, and
Well,
then
it takes the developers some time to find out what the capabilities are.
exactly, you know. I mean, that's I think where the Master Chief Collection even came from. You know, I mean, the whole reason that they're doing this at this time, at least I think, is because like I said, they've got a new matchmaking system that they got to work all the bugs out of before Halo 5 comes out, and they know that, which is why they're doing this here. And and another thing is, again, it gets all the games together, in one thing, and they don't have to worry about releasing a new untested game, you know, and they've got this one that they can keep adding stuff to it. I know they announced they were going to be putting the ODST campaign into this game, and hopefully that means that they'll be doing